It's a great pleasure to welcome you to Yokohama. On this special occasion of a visit to Japan, I wish you enjoy Japan and its culture. You can enjoy your visit to foreign countries effectively if you have learned a few key words. In France, for example, you should learn such words like bonjour, merci, très bien, s'il vous plaît. What a word of this kind in Japanese? I like to give you a magic word, sumimasen, meaning I'm sorry. Of course, you can use sumimasen in the situation in which you should say I'm sorry or excuse me. But you can also use sumimasen when you want to say thank you. What does sumimasen or I'm sorry mean thank you in Japan? In the Japanese mind, thank you is thank you very much, but I'm very sorry to bother you for my interest, which are none of your business. Sumimasen is a sign of deep appreciation. We prefer sumimasen rather than arigato or thanks. Sumimasen expresses more appreciation than simply saying thanks or arigato. Sumimasen can also be used for please when you invite somebody. It means, I'm sorry, it's not so wonderful, but please help yourself. You can, of course, use sumimasen when you are requested to do something and you cannot reply affirmatively, namely, when you want to say, no, I cannot. You often say, no, I cannot, I'm very sorry. So it's very natural to say sumimasen in such a situation. Surprisingly enough, however, you can also say sumimasen in the opposite situation, when you want to say, yes, I can. Whenever Japanese say, yes, I can, in their mind, it is always, I'm sorry, I'm not so competent as you expect, but I can do something for you. Therefore, in short, you can say sumimasen, then you should say, yes, I can. I think President Obama should say in Japan, sumimasen, 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 instead of, yes, we can. Thus, almost in any case, you can say sumimasen to the Japanese, and they understand you. While in the Western world, you should clearly say yes or no. You don't need to say much in Japan, or you shouldn't say much. To most Japanese people, silence is gold, and the talkative are always disliked as fine words butter no parsnips. People understand others without hearing words. This is one of the characteristics of the Japanese culture and language. Sumimasen could be used anywhere in Japan, but be careful. There is only one case I can imagine you shouldn't say sumimasen. That is when you wish to kiss your girlfriend. She would hit you if you said sumimasen. My advice here is say nothing. A Brazilian staff member of the ITU told me that she expects every morning to hear I love you from her husband when he leaves his home, and to hear I love you every night. It is a confirmation of love, and without it, she feels very nervous. I told her that in Japan, it is the very time that the husbands had affairs with other women when they say, I love you, to their wife. silence is really golden in Japan. It is stressful to do business with foreigners because you sometimes misjudge people. Especially Japanese are often said inscrutable. They react differently from what you expected. You sometimes misunderstand them, and you are often misunderstood by them. I'd like to try to explain today something fundamentally different between Japanese and Western cultures. What I have learned from my experience in the international community. I conducted a small survey at the ITU concerning national character. I categorized basic human behaviors in 2 dimensions, long-term and short-term interests, and individual and group interests. Typical characteristic behaviors are well pressed in this diagram. Individual player, team player, cooperative, aggressive, easygoing, hardworking. I asked some of my staff members to evaluate a number of nationalities in accordance with this categorization. If you think the Japanese are very progressive, then give them 10 points. If not progressive at all, then 5 points. Maximum 10 points, minimum 5 points to each characteristic behavior. This is a evaluation of the Japanese behavior by my Spanish assistant at ITU. So Japanese are quite cooperative, not aggressive, not easygoing, hardworking. This is the evaluation by Brazilian deputy. It was almost the same. This is an evaluation of Europeans by my assistant. It's fairly difficult to see, but red one is Italian, I think. Very easygoing. It's not me, by my assistant. This is a result of evaluation by 14 staff members of the ITU on different nationalities. And you can see red line, Japanese are quite unique and different from other nationalities. The Japanese are more inclined to the group interest rather than individual interest, and more long-term interest rather than short-term interest. For the people who are thinking their own interest as a priority, it's sometimes difficult to understand those people who are thinking group interest first. When I took the office of the Secretary General of the ITU a decade ago, I sent a mail to all staff members to invite their proposals to improve the ITU. It is a common practice in Japan to encourage workers to submit improvement proposals to their boss. However, at the ITU, many considered that the new boss was encouraging a tip-off to inform secretly to the boss something wrong with their colleagues. And the staff association got angry and held an extraordinary meeting to discuss my mail. Another typical misunderstanding was the case of the report of my official visit to India. I found that the Indians were making big efforts in manufacturing switches suitable to hard environmental conditions in developing countries. I reported it in one of the mails which I occasionally send to the staff to improve communication. I simply wanted my staff members to know the fact because they were in charge of the development of telecommunications, especially in the development world. However, they took my mail in a way that I was accusing them by saying that Indians were industrious, while ITU staff members were not. Those misunderstandings, in my opinion, started from the differences in one's concerns. Their primary concerns were their own interests in the short term. Therefore, it was very natural that they had misunderstood that I also had been thinking of my own interests. That is, from their viewpoint, to make them work harder. Thus, the new Japanese boss was quite incomprehensible to the ITU staff members, and in turn, they were in fact incomprehensible to me. There are a lot of differences between Western people and the Japanese. One of the most remarkable ones is that in Western society, you should speak out and request proactively, while in Japan, you should wait until it will be given to you. In Western world, ask and it shall be given you. Seek and ye shall find. Knock and it shall be opened unto you. In Japan, everything comes to him who waits. Everything comes to him who waits. In the Japanese society, you should not request too much. You must wait until you are given. It would be easy for us to understand if we compare popular legendary tales in both the world. Please listen to one of the most popular fairy tales in Japan, and I'm very sorry, sumimasen, for my bad reading. Once upon a time, there lived an old man and old woman. The old man was kind and gentle, but his wife was mean and greedy. One morning, as usual, the old man left for work in the mountains, where he cut wood, plowed the earth, and worked in the field. This morning, he went deep into the mountains to cut firewood. While he was working, he heard the voice of a sparrow crying. When he looked down, he saw an injured young sparrow trapped under a dead branch. "Oh, you poor thing," the old man said as he gently picked up the sparrow. "Don't worry, I'll take care of you. You'll be fine in no time. Let's go to my house," he said. When they arrived, the old man bandaged the sparrow and fed it with some rice grains. The old woman didn't like this at all and got angry. "Why are you wasting our precious rice on that bird?" she exclaimed. But the old man paid her no mind and worked hard to nurse the young sparrow back to health. One day, as the old man went back to work in the mountain, he asked the old woman, "Take care of the sparrow, please." "Yes, yes, I know," the old woman snapped. But she didn't care about the bird and had no intention of feeding it. She left the sparrow at home and went to the river to do the wash. While it was left alone, the little sparrow got hungry. It found a bowl of starch that the old woman had made. Because sparrow was so hungry, it began to nibble at the starch without thinking and ate it all up. Then the old woman returned from the river, ready to starch the linens. She noticed that the starch was missing and asked the sparrow what had happened. "I'm sorry," the sparrow said. "I was hungry and couldn't help eating it." The old woman flew into a rage. "You thief," she thundered. "I'll fix you so you'll never be able to do anything like that again," she said, and she cut the little sparrow's tongue with a pair of scissors. The poor little sparrow flew back into the mountain, crying the whole way. When the old man returned from the mountains, he noticed that the sparrow was gone. "What happened to the little sparrow?" he asked the old woman. "That bird ate my starch," she replied, "so I cut its tongue and chased it away." The old man was stunned. "Oh, forgive me, little sparrow. It must have hurt you so much," he said, with tears streaming down his face. The old man then went back into the mountains to search for the sparrow. The old man went here and there in the forest, calling out, "Little sparrow, come back." But the sparrow was nowhere to be found. "That's right," the old man thought to himself. "I've heard that the sparrows have an inn. If I go there, I can find him." As he was walking further into the mountain, 3 sparrows appeared before him. "Oh, sparrows, where is your inn?" he asked them. This way, chop, chop," the sparrows said. And they led the man through a bamboo grove even further into the mountains. Suddenly, in front of him was a splendid mansion with many sparrows lined up in front of the gate. "Welcome," one of them said. "We've been expecting you." "Have you seen my little sparrow?" the old man asked. "He's waiting for you inside," the sparrow answered, and led the old man into a parlor in the back of the mansion. When he entered the room, the little sparrow came running up to greet him. "Oh, you poor dear, are you okay? I was so worried," the man said, delighted to see the little sparrow again. The sparrows brought out trays of delicious food for the old man and began to sing and dance for him. After the old man had quite enjoyed himself, he got up and said to the sparrows, "I wish I could stay, but I must be getting home. My wife will be worried." With this, the sparrows brought out 2 wicker baskets, a big one and a small one. "As a gift, take whichever one you like," one of the sparrows said. Although he had no desire for a gift, he accepted the small basket. "I'm sorry I'm old, so I guess I'd better take the small one," he said, and he made his way home. When the old man reached home, he called out to the old woman, "I'm home. I met a little sparrow. I even got a gift. I wonder what's inside." The 2 of them opened the basket, and to their surprise, the basket was filled with gold, silver, fine cloths, and other valuables. "So that's why it was so heavy," the old man said. "It's a good thing I took the small basket." "What? There was a big one?" the old woman shrieked. "The big one must have even more valuables. Okay, I'll go and get the big basket." And no sooner had she said those words than she was out of the door and running to the mountains, overtaken by greed. When the old woman reached the sparrow's inn, she called out to the little sparrow, "Little sparrow, little sparrow, I'm here," she said with a forced smile. And the little sparrow came out to see her. Little sparrow, the woman began, "I took care of you, didn't I? I'm not hungry, so just hurry up and bring out the baskets." The sparrows were disappointed, but brought out 2 baskets anyway. Choose whichever one you like, they said. The old woman didn't hesitate. I'll take the big one. I'm strong enough to carry it. As she was on her way out, one of the sparrows said to her, don't open the basket until you get home. But she paid it no mind and ran home as fast as she could. On the way back, however, the woman could no longer contain her greed. She desperately wanted to see her valuables, so she stopped and opened the basket. When she did, smoke came out along with one-eyed goblins, giant snakes, and other monsters. The old woman was so shocked that she threw the basket down and tried to run away. In her haste, she slipped and fell, rolling all the way down the mountain. Ladies and gentlemen, here are fundamental values of the Japanese society: love for the nature, kindness to others, humbleness, not to be greedy, to wait until be given, etc. We are told those stories repeatedly since our childhood. On the other hand, in Western countries, you hear Jack and Beanstalk and Little Red Riding Hood. Here, Jack got a fortune by killing the giant. Little Red Riding Hood was deceived by the wolf. The stories are totally different. You are told to take risks. You are told not to be deceived. We are told to wait, to be modest, and be humble and kind to others. Why were these differences created? The differences, in my opinion, came mainly from geopolitical differences. Japan is a mountainous island country, separated from the continent. The island country, in turn, enjoys a climate whose peculiarisms of 4 distinct seasons color Japanese thinking and behavior. It is said that the human nature in Japan is an extension of the nature itself. People live on rice produced at rice pads cultivated by generations. They live together with neighbors, helping each other in very small habitable land. Since cultivable space was so narrow, intensive farming was inevitable. The productivity of farming depends upon the cooperation of community members, as well as the knowledge and experience of farming. Therefore, maintaining peaceful relationship with the members of the communities in order to have good cooperation was essential to live in the narrow land. Respecting experienced and knowledgeable elderly people was to keep higher productivity by retaining agricultural know-how in the community. To encourage these behaviors was a natural consequence for survival. In this way, the preference of group interests rather than individual interests and long-term interests rather than short-term interests was a piece of wisdom for their survival in Japan. This is different from competitive society with vast land and frontier in the most places of the globe. You had land to expand for cultivation. You had environmental opportunities and potentials to expand, while we did not. The stronger were the winner in the Western society. On the other hand, in Japan, good coordinators who could maintain order were the winner. Although I believe that geographical environment was the most decisive factor for curbing the peculiar Japanese behaviors, I cannot ignore the Buddhist influence. Buddhism was adopted in 6th century by Japanese rulers primarily to establish social order and political control. Buddhism was accompanied by the arrival of countless artisans and scholars from Korea and China. Buddhism brought new theories on government, a means to establish strong centralized authority, a system of philosophy and ethics, and advanced new technologies for building, painting, and sculpture. What is Buddhism? Since Buddhism is a very complicated system of thoughts and philosophy, it is difficult to describe it. However, I understand it in the following way, in short. Buddhism teaches that one lives according to the universal law that governs both the physical and moral order of the universe. Your body, actions, and thinking are just a part of the universe. It regards the world as transient. Even those things that seem most intimate, one's thoughts and emotions are transient states that come and go. Good deeds result in positive consequences, and bad deeds lead to negative results. Buddhism looks at the everyday world, love, hatred, money, power, etc., as a source of suffering for those who remained attached to it. To get rid of this attachment is a way to bring an end to suffering. Once you have reached the enlightened state of this wisdom, you can get rid of great burdens. The clamoring ego with its desires and disappointment is silenced. When a person gains this wisdom, a deep and lasting sense of peace and contentment replaces selfish craving and gratification. There is optimism in Buddhism about human nature, where it was committed to the belief that all human beings had the potential to attain the wisdom that brings an end to suffering. There is an ultimate optimism about the world itself, since it teaches that once human attachments are discarded, the world takes on a new and positive significance. To reach this state of enlightenment, a sect like Zen believes that one must practice meditation. Making a pilgrimage is widely believed as one of the ways to grasp the enlightenment. A sect like Jodoshu believes that worshipping Amida Nyorai, a Buddha, is enough, and simply repeating his name, Name Amidabs, Name Amidabs, takes you the world of Amida Nyorai, a Buddhist hymn. It's very easy, isn't it? Only to say Name Amidabs, Name Amidabs. By the way, I'm very happy because my family, the Utsumis, belong to this easygoing sect. I can go to the heaven in the easiest way. Then what is this enlightened state of wisdom? In my opinion, it is to understand and feel from the bottom of your heart that you are just a part of the universe in 4 dimensions, in geometrical space and in time-space. When I say in time-space, it means that you yourself, your mind, your body are a consequence of the past and an origin for the future. When you really feel this, what you are suffering from looks very, very little. At the beginning, Buddha was just a man who practiced asceticism. It's very difficult to announce, asceticism. But attained the spiritual enlightenment and established Buddhism. He was later regarded and worshipped as an eternal existence, like a god. Some of his colleagues and disciples, those who reached at the level of Buddhist wisdom, Nyorai, as well as those who are practicing and yet in the process of reaching the wisdom, we call it Bosatsu, were all later regarded as an external existence. They were all worshipped. Buddhism is a polytheism and absorbs everything. In the process of spreading to the east from India, it absorbed Hindu gods as well as local gods of the Central Asia. They are all regarded mostly as a guardian of Buddhism. So there are 4 types of Buddha sculpture to be worshipped in Japan. Nyorai, the top, Nyorai. I think it's Nyorai, who had attained the wisdom. Bosatsu, who is in the process of attaining wisdom. Myo and Ten, there are 4. Nyorais are Buddha who have attained the stage of enlightenment. They are all considered as the eternal being like gods. There are thousands of Nyorai. Each Nyorai is in his own heaven. It means that there are thousands of heaven in Buddhism. The most popular one is Amida Nyorai. Bosatsu are disciples who are practicing to reach the stage of enlightenment. They are considered to have superpowers to save people and worshipped as if they were God. The most popular one is Kannon Bosatsu. Myo is an incarnation of Dainichi Nyorai, a Buddha who commands the entire universe. So this and this is the same. Tens are gods and goddesses of Hindu and Central Asia. They are considered as a guardian of Buddhism. This is also 10. This is also very famous Ashura. The fundamental differences between Western and Japanese cultures is a difference between monotheism and polytheism. As mentioned above, in the Buddhist universe, there are thousands of Buddha, and each Buddha has its own world. There are thousands of Buddha. This is a world. there are 1,000 worlds in the universe. They coexist with each other. The Buddhist universe is totally different from the one of a single absolute God believed by Christians or Muslims. Thus, in Buddhism, different beliefs could coexist side by side, and we are taught to avoid polarization. We are usually inclined to extremes in a way of life: war or peace, yes or no, white or black, intellectualism or materialism, absolutism or relativism, and so on. This kind of polarization seems inevitable. However, in Buddhism, it is taught that this should be avoided as much as possible. It recommends us to be harmonious with opposing ideas and interests. Since everything is a result of the law of cause and effect, there should be no absolute eternal option. The flow of the river is ceaseless, and its water is never the same. The bubbles that float in the pools, now vanishing, now forming, are not of long duration. So in the world are man and his dwelling. This is a very famous sentence by Kamo Chome to explain the essence of Buddhism. Foreigners visiting Japan for the first time are likely to think that it is a completely secularized country. The majority of the Japanese seem to be indifferent to religious matters, except on special occasions such as festivals or funeral services. Particularly when young Japanese are asked about their religious beliefs, they tend to reply with an expression of astonishment or to smile uncomprehendingly. In most Japanese, a Buddhist altar and the Shinto shrine, which are believed to protect the house and family, stand side by side. When people buy a car, they usually hang a charm in it. The charm may be one blessed by a Buddhist priest or a Shinto priest. According to a statistic, there are 95 million lay followers of Buddhism. When they are added to an estimated 106 million Shinto followers, the total exceeds the total population of 120 million Japanese. This discrepancy may make little sense when analyzed in Western religious terms. However, it is not unusual for a Japanese person to belong to both institutions of Buddhism and Shintoism at the same time. Most Japanese people get married in a Shinto ceremony and hold Buddhist service for a funeral ceremony. The variety of Japanese religiosity cannot be comprehended as an either A or B situation, as in the case of Christianity or Judaism or Islam, but rather as an as well as situation. This all-embracing nature, the fundamental teaching of Buddhism, has permeated Japanese life so deeply that the Japanese take the position of as well as in every aspect of their life. This behavior of as well as makes them incomprehensible to Western people, and the Japanese look inscrutable to them. The wisdom for survival in the island country I have mentioned before, together with the teaching of Buddhism and Confucianism, developed in Japan a strong sense of responsibility called Bushido. It is loosely analogous to the Western concept of chivalry or noblesse oblige. Bushido is a code of conduct and moral principles which samurai were required or instructed to observe. More frequently, it is a code unuttered and unwritten. Bushido stresses benevolence, especially to the lower ranking people, honesty to anyone, justice, honor, loyalty, rectitude, frugality, self-sacrifice. Under the Bushido idea, if a samurai failed to uphold his honor, he could regain it by performing harakiri, ritual suicide. The honor was more valuable than a life. Those virtues stressed honesty, honor, self-sacrifice, benevolence, etc., were, in my opinion, all oriented to the interest of the community one belonged to. Thus, for centuries in Japan, among upper-class people, individual interests were almost discarded, and the virtues effective to maintain the community were appraised. Although people belonging to the samurai class were only 10% of the total population, and there are no longer the samurai class in today's Japan, the Japanese people still admire the Bushido ethics. Episodes describing the Bushido ethics are very much loved and often romanticized in today's Japan. By the way, there has been no concept of individualism in Japan until it was imported only 140 years ago from the Western world. Nowadays, the Bushido ethics are rapidly disappearing among the Japanese, and they tend to behave selfishly. However, compared with Western people, at the survey I showed you, the Japanese are inclined to behave more for group's interest, disregarding self-interest. I hope you have now understood to some extent the background of so-called the inscrutable Japanese. Why could the word like sumimasen be used everywhere? Why don't they show their sentiment and thought much? I hope you can answer, because it is not the distinction or identification of yourself from others, but harmonization with others that the Japanese consider most important. Why do they choose group interest rather than individual interest? You can answer now, because it was the wisdom for survival and maybe the influence of the past. The Japanese do not talk much, do not claim much, do not show their sentiment much. They wait until they are given, but they think much. They take care of others much. Only when they judge it is matured, they take actions. They stand up after they have pondered for a considerable time. When they take actions, they will carry out their duties perfectly, because they are very serious and industrious. Through the globalization, the Japanese people are changing, especially younger generations. You may see on the street of Yokohama young boys and girls who are shouting shamelessly in a loud voice with dyed hair, wearing untidy dress. Nevertheless, I think you will find a strong tendency of the inscrutable Japanese behavior in every Japanese person you see. I wish the Japanese are more comprehensive to you now. I thank you very much.